Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Our World Today, the live discussion. We're very happy to be with you. Today we have something that we'd like to talk about that is very important, amongst other things, and that is, I guess, the protests in US campuses and actually campuses around the world about the situation in Israel and Palestine. And obviously, that is something that is very important. There are very different things at play right now in all of these situations. So we'd just like to kind of talk about um, what it means for us, why it is happening suddenly and or not so suddenly, and what we can do to heal that situation and finally find solutions. So I like maybe Isaiah and Sage to kind of talk about the situation a little bit. And first of all, for our international community watching, I would like to ask, what is the exact reason why students on university campuses are manifesting, are protesting? Because I feel like for people who are not aware of the situation, this is kind of unclear. So would you like to maybe clarify the actual reason why you're manifesting?
Yeah, so the campus protests are going on because the universities have lots of financial investments. Some of them have investments directly in Israeli companies or things like that. Some of them have investments in these huge investment funds, and some of the investments that are part of the fund are tied to Israel somehow. Sometimes, universities get money for research from, the Israeli government or other entities within Israel. So it might be like, for example, like a defense research kind of thing, I guess commissioned by or at least supported by the Israeli government. And so, yeah, the students across a lot of different campuses in the U.S., but certainly not all, are just saying they're demanding that their university divest from pretty much everything associated with Israel. Some only want transparency about like what dealings they have with Israel. Some of them Yeah, some of them want transparency over like, so if you're invested in Israel, then how is it being invested? And they just want to see that it's not going into the military, right? It's not going into anything having to do with defense with Israel, but their demands kind of vary. So that's generally what it is. And on different campuses, like close to 20, around 20, there were or have been encampments. So, the students have just been saying like we're not going to leave this spot, and they're just kind of camping out there. Um, yeah, protesting to demand that divestment from Israel. So yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of understanding that. Thank you for clarifying. I had a question about like what exactly are these investments, and I think it's unclear. There is actually like you can see a sheet or a kind of a document online about what investments have been happening, gifts and contracts between universities and different countries for the past 4 years. But I think it's actually unclear in which way this is going and where this is going. So is it like university getting like money to the country giving money to the university? Where are the actual investments? And I think that's actually kind of fair that some are demanding where this is going and more clarification about that, even if it's not like all the protesters. So I'm just curious if you have any insight on that.
Yeah, it varies. Like it's different for every university. Like some of them, like when you talked about receiving money from Israel or from like Israeli entities, again, that would be like Um, I don't remember what university it was, maybe Northeastern University, I don't remember, but some students were saying like, oh, like you shouldn't receive money from Israel for defense related research, right? So that's the one side of the dynamic, but the other side of the dynamic, the main side of it is just the students are targeting all the investments that the universities have in Israeli companies, defense companies, or otherwise. And sometimes, like I was saying, it's unclear like what exactly the university is even invested in because, like I was saying, like they have like this, they're part of this like huge investment fund or whatever um, that they put their money into with the hope of or getting a return right on it. And so sometimes with these funds, you like just don't know like what you're even invested in. So part of their demand would be like, oh, let's nail it down like exactly like who and what are like you invested in this fund. And once you determine that, divest anything related to Israel or related to Israel's defense, military, and defense sectors. So, but it's just, I think it's different for every university. I didn't comb through all of it, but that's the idea. So, oh, I can't hear you, Urine. Oh.
Sorry, I was on mute, but I get that. I guess that's where the questioning is coming from for some of them. And before we talk about maybe like some the things that happened that didn't feel right, let's maybe talk about how some presidents of universities chose to respond. I guess the problem of the media is that they concentrated on some universities, so obviously Columbia, NYU, and things like that, and the arrest that got there. And many felt that the arrests were very, very abusive. Some a professor was even violently arrested in one of the universities just because she observed the protesters in the manifestation, the protest, and she kind of raised questions about like the violence of the arrests that were conducted against students, and she herself got violently put down and arrested. And I wonder how you guys feel about, and that is a question for Nadia too this time. Like, I wonder how you guys feel about how this happened and what could have been done differently and why you feel that maybe it happened. And I know people talk about anti-Semitism, but is that a justification for all that we've seen this week? Is my question.
Um, I mean, it's definitely not that alone. Whatever truth is in that, anti-Semitism, those anti-Semitism like claims or whatever. Um, it doesn't justify when there was like violence, like when people were violently arrested. I feel like that's just kind of like I think that happened in like Emory University, like in Atlanta or the Atlanta area. I think I remember reading that. Like there were several just violent arrests that involved like beating and just other like really rough treatment. And the thing about it is like that's only really justified if a person is violent toward the police or if they pose a clear and imminent danger, like if they're armed or something. And I don't recall if they were, and I don't think they were, but I feel like it just kind of reflects the it's like high levels of emotion with this whole issue, and there's a sense of like um, disdain, and anger toward the protesters because like I think I don't really know the exact numbers, but yeah, like a big swath of the United States is like could be seen as like very supportive of I'm going to put it in air quotes, like quote unquote supportive of Israel, and just even maybe disdainful of the Palestinian cause. And so I don't know if that contributed to like violent arrest, because part of me is like, why would you get violent unless these people are getting violent with you? Other than to be like, oh, just to kind of show your disdain or displeasure with them. So that's what I felt about that, you know. But in terms of like the actual arrests, we can get into that more, like why people were arrested. But I want to hear what Nadia has to say too about all this. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the presidents aren't really, siding with either side. They're keeping their own personal opinion, like not clear to the students, and that's what's upsetting to the students. And of course, we've seen repercussions of the Harvard dean being fired because of her opinions. So maybe a lot of presidents could be fearful of expressing how they feel, and so they're just trying to like calm down the chaos that's going on in their university. But they also want to hold an alignment with the US government and how the US government is supporting Israel and sending funds to Gaza. So they kind of want to mirror the same while also trying to, put down all the chaos. But when you are leading a university and your students are paying for that education and that mindset, and you end up not giving a clear message of where you stand, yeah, there will be a lot of upset students, and rightfully so. So as long as you're clear on where you stand, that can be, a grounding mechanism for students. But of course, even us, we are trying to dismantle all of this chaos and trying to get to a very solid answer and solution for this. And yeah.
Yeah, I understand that point of view. I feel there's definitely like a lot of truth to that. Um, I feel like it's complicated for presidents. I wish some of them would address like maybe just what happened this week and say like, hey, we regret like how violent this has been, and this is where we stand and what we want. And I guess like the containment got so far for some of them that it went into violent arrest, right? Instead of like, this is like truthfully like this is how we feel about what the students are doing, this is how we feel, but it doesn't mean that we condone everything or not condone everything. Like you don't have to be polarized. Like you don't have to play into the game of polarization that everybody is playing. And I guess the fear that you were talking about is kind of fear that they would fall into one side or another if they were to express publicly what has been done. And I can understand that. The problem is that a lot of even professors at universities have been saying that there is definitely like in the violent arrest and some of the other things that went out this week, a lack of care for their own student body, um, and maybe a little bit too much of politics into the decisions of containing um, the protest. The other things that are problematic, though, is the fact that certain students at certain schools, and it's disappointing to see that the media was kind of generalizing this, even though it's like it might be a minority of the students, were actually threatening to Jewish students and saying like, hey, Hamas should get you, Israel, like you should be next, and promoting genocide. And I feel like a lot of the times the media is depicting this as if you're pro-Palestinian, you're pro-genocide. And I do understand that people are not understanding that Hamas is not a good guy. And that's the problem with a lot of how Jewish students in the Jewish community feel that this is violent towards them because Hamas is literally a terrorist group that doesn't care to respect human life. However, that misunderstanding shouldn't be the point of saying that everything that people say is anti-Semitic or anti-Semitism without hearing them out. So it feels like kind of mostly a miscommunication, and it feels like a blunder of of complex things put into the mixer. And we have what we've seen this week. So when we go to the core of it, it kind of feels ridiculous because it's like, hey, you could literally settle this down with a discussion. But at the same time, they're kind of mirroring the situation that is there in Israel and Palestine if they actually wanted to settle down and discuss for the past few decades. Um, this whole conflict could have been avoided. So to go a little bit into the spiritual side, I guess it's just a reflection of a choice that humanity is making, like human people are making. Overall, it's not just Israel and Palestine, and we can now understand how this conflict can literally shake the stability that international geopolitics tried to establish in the past few years, and how this concerns us.
Yeah, like I agree with what you're saying. I feel like I don't know. I feel like they reached for a solution that may or may not have been justified. I don't know if it was. Some of them, like some spokespeople for universities, were saying like, "Oh, like, well, you have the right to protest and freedom of speech, but within like campus guidelines, and like if you like violate the campus guidelines, then you could be like arrested basically for like trespassing, I guess, because like the kids, the people in the encampments were basically, camped out there, right? So, but other than just like being there and potentially being annoying to some people, um, they may not have done anything besides that, and they just hold a view that is very unpopular, regardless of whether it's correct or incorrect of what they're saying. But like you're saying, basically, I feel like there needs to be some nuance to this discussion. But I feel like the dynamics that are going on in the country make it so that it's pretty hard to have a nuanced discussion. And what I'm talking about is this has been going on for a while, like Nadia mentioned, right? Claudine Gay, the former president of Harvard, she resigned because of some things that she said before a Senate panel or before the Senate about how she was like, well, basically something that she said about her response to the pro-Palestinian protesters, right? So universities, I think, are feeling really under fire with this and really anxious. And I understand because, like, for a lot of universities, I think for almost pretty much all universities, at least some of their money comes from the government, federal or local government. So, or both, I mean. So, yeah, I think they're concerned about that and about their political future and also their public relations, like their image. And I think the fact is, like, even though um, wait, I lost my train of thought, but I found a better one. So basically, okay, so basically what people are saying, some people in the US are saying, including the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson and other politicians are saying the universities are just allowing these students to be anti-Semitic and to intimidate and harass Jewish students, and it's a terrible thing. And that may be true in some cases. In other cases, it's more like up for debate, or it's not even the case. But because they're saying this, and because a lot of Americans have a knee-jerk reaction where they're like, "Oh yes, I don't support that," then it puts a lot of pressure on universities, right, to kind of shut this down. Whether or not that's actually true, that on their given campus, that this stuff is happening is hard to ascertain. Even when I was looking it up, I was trying to look it up on the internet and see. So, like, are these different protesters on university campuses being anti-Semitic? It was hard to find answers, and you have to really dig. And guess what you mostly find, just like you were saying, Yurine, about polarization? You just find sources that are either vastly biased toward the pro-Israel side or vastly biased toward the pro-Palestinian side. Never do you see, or if you can find it, then I respect your research skills a lot, and I would be very grateful if you could add it. Rarely do you ever see a nuanced look into like what's actually going on here. So if I were part of the university, what I would do is I would try to somebody within the university, I think it would be good if they went there and they interviewed different people and they talked to them and they observed them, the protesters, and they're like, what do you want? What's your perspective on this and that? And you got lots of different perspectives and you got a big overview of what's going on to give to the public, instead of letting these really loud voices say, this is what's happening, no, this is what's happening, like that. I feel like that's what happened. And because the universities are so afraid, because they feel so afraid of negative PR and even jeopardizing their funding, they won't do that. They won't be like, hey, let me show you what's actually happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they're letting others speak for them.
Yeah,
So, and they're letting the media speak for them, or they're letting politicians speak for them. And I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, these protesters are or they aren't being like anti-Semitic or hostile or anything. I'm just saying this is a public relations lesson that I feel like is being shown here, you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a PR lesson, but also I wish it could be a healing lesson for media as well. What I would have wished to see, because we had something similar happen um, in Paris. What I would have wished to see is a little bit more, I guess, the nuance that we were talking about reflected in the media. So, for example, like I work in a school, and a lot of people follow like Islam in that school. And a lot of teachers are saying like they don't want to talk about it at all because like it's as if like if a kid would express their actual anxiety and fears, it would obviously be pro-Palestinian, which is not necessarily the case. We're expressing like not feeling heard or a need to just like share the pain that they've been feeling or the kind of injustices that Palestine has been under for decades, which is kind of true, even though it's not like 100% black or white. And nobody wants to talk about that. What I would have liked to see is the kind of dedication that Pew Research, for example, gives into making surveys. They would do that for the university, and it's kind of hard to have that when the thing is actually happening. Like you cannot record history or study history when the thing is actually happening. You need some kind of step back. However, we can do the beginning of a work on survey of saying like, okay, this is this part of this that is from the Jewish community, but from the Jewish community, this is the part that says like, hey, we just want our family to be safe. And this is the part that is actually extreme and doesn't want Palestinian at all. And this is the part of the students that just want equality and peace for everyone. This is the part that is pro-Palestinian, but because there is actually so many dead right now, and that recognize that there has been breach of the human rights in all kinds of ways, but especially from the state of Israel, because there are so many dead. We knew there would be dead people, but they refuse that, which is normal. And this is actually the part that is extremist and says that we cannot trust like Israelis at all and kind of encompass, I guess include the whole Jewish community in this. and so many other things in between. We know how to do that for so many things that divide our community and our nations and our countries. I wish we could do that to just have a little bit of a better understanding for, Jane Doe that just like doesn't know anything about anything outside of her Christian county and doesn't know the situation and is forced to take a stand because everybody is telling her to take a stand, and obviously she will take a stand um, for things that pe other people around her believe, and or John Schmo that doesn't have access to all of that information. And right now, what we're seeing is a fight between intellectual people. Um, for intellectual people, but actually broadcasted for everyone to see through media and not in the right way because it actually doesn't represent the whole of the different realities. And I think that's kind of sad. And I wonder if we can do better so that people actually understand, like having compassion for the different understandings and the emotions of people. Because by God, like being Jewish or being Palestinian or being pro something is not a crime um per se. And yeah, we just need more communication in this. So I don't know how you feel about that, Nadia, but that was my kind of my feeling on that.
I feel that there's a reason why we can't really understand it is because part of both sides are playing into insanity. So there's no way that we can understand insanity when it comes to the lack of safety of your brothers and sisters, especially if our clear next step would be to a call for a ceasefire. So if we were to call for a ceasefire and both sides were to agree for that, right? And then all of a sudden, Hamas gets angry and throws another, another bomb, another something. It does not, it breaks the ceasefire. It automatically breaks the ceasefire. So then it's like, so you're saying that you are not for the safety of yourself and your brothers and sisters. And that's what truly I feel is not being seen is that when you're bombing the other side, you're literally bombing your brothers and sisters. In the eyes of God, that's how it's being shown. And, karma will show up on both sides for that. If you're for not genocide, then you cannot, willingly clear out race and culture. If you want to prosper in the land that you have been welcome in, then you have to welcome parts of the nation that are not doing so well. And we can see that Israel financially is doing very well. But if they were to, establish their own state and include individuals, heaven on earth has different ethnicities, different individuals. So how could you say that this is your heaven on earth and then not include others and individuals? And the same thing goes with Palestine. So the solution I see is surrendering to God at this point. And if you actually want ceasefire, to follow through on that ceasefire and then restabilize and let go of your pride. I understand one side is very much more profitable and prospering compared to another side because they have allies. They're working with countries that are supporting them. Okay. So God would want you to be abundant too. God would want you to be at peace too. Does it have to come with a name? I'm not sure. That really has to come down to your personal healing. Are you willing to continue this for a name? Are you willing to continue this for self-defense? Yes. Self-defense is love. You have to defend yourself. But it really comes down to who's taking the next shot and what was the reason for that shot. Now everything is very calculated on what is going on. Regardless of the past, if I were to speak to Jane Doe about this, I could not explain to her of this. But now, from this period on and moving forward, what are the action steps that are happening? How is Hamas representing? How is Israel representing? What are the people of Palestine representing? And if we are to violently kick out protesters in universities for trying to express themselves, how are we any different than what's happening in Palestine and Israel? We're just including violence into it for no reason. When we could include a discussion, we can unravel this and get to a clear point of like, this is what you side for because of this.
Yeah. I would say that having a ceasefire would require that people on both sides just actually want peace. And that's not what they want. And sadly, even Hamas, like, they want deals out of it. And I can understand, like, some of the deals are release of the hostages, but and the way it's communicating is all well and it looks beautiful and looks simple on the outside, but the intentions that are behind them don't feel clear, and that's why no side is agreeing to anything right now. And so that is that. And there's actually another problem is that both nations are believing in things that are of the past. Like for example, like for 5,000 years, like Israelis have been persecuted on their land, the land that was promised by God, and things like that, blah 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 blah. And so they're basing they have a feeling of attack that was renewed through sadly the Holocaust that they're basing their theories on and their beliefs on. And on the other side, Palestinians are basing their feeling of attack on the fact that they don't feel accepted, but they don't want to accept the others as well. So the other side is feeling even more attacked, and so on and so forth until we end up at this war that we are witnessing. So both are feeling a feeling of attack, and we know from healing our feelings that beliefs can be very misleading. And actually, if people took one step towards healing and choosing not to feel attacked, the story would be very different. Not saying that you would forget where you come from and you forget your self-defense, but you would not feel attacked. And so suddenly, like, cohabiting, co-inhabiting lands could feel very easy. Um, but yeah, we're not there yet. But yeah, there is definitely, you touched on the core, and the core is that feeling of attack from both sides. And I think this is really the actual core of all of this mess. And as long as we don't heal this feeling of attack, we're going to be there trying to talk about logistics and sites and complexities, but more than ever, it boils down to, are you ready to face that victimization and that fear that has no reason to exist at present? You know, are you ready to stop basing it on past actions, like 5,000 years of we don't even know what. Yeah, because like if your whole identity and faith is based on the attacks that you underwent, then where's the rest of the message? Like, where's the love? Where are the things that are actually went well? Um, where are the gifts that you received? Um, what is it that you believe in? So yeah, that's what I would say. as well as few words on that. So anything you'd like to say as a conclusion for this topic?
I just wanted to reiterate that, like, the promised land is you. Like, you create the promised land by being that person that is of like heavenly purpose. It just doesn't come and then you get to act however you wish to act. Um, it has to come with your own purification.
Yeah, that's very true. So, um, transitioning to something that may not have anything to do with this, but has been happening this week, I would like to know more about this opioid settlement that the city of Philadelphia has done with Walgreens. And Nadia has been researching on that topic. And I would just like for you to explain like what this is actually about. So, what is the city of Philadelphia, I guess, saying about Walgreens and their involvement in opioids, like the circulation of opioids right now?
Yeah. So the city of Philadelphia is saying there's a misregulation when it comes to opiate medication, which is like pain medication. And basically, what the article was showing is that Walgreens is the face of that because they don't have proper regulations when it comes to their clients coming in saying, oh, I want this, that, and the other. And they're not really checking how many medications they're taking out and can this become addictive. And although that is a problem that needs to be censored and monitored, my feeling is that it's a whole issue when it comes to the system of prescribing pain medications. And Walgreens isn't the scapegoat for it. Like, yes, we can get a large sum settlement when it comes to dysregulation of opiates from Walgreens, because you can have, those, we have it in some pharmacies like sensors and you lock it up and you have to ask someone for permission to open it, and then there's pharmacies that look into how many medications you're taking and then they call their doctor and say, hey, something doesn't look right. So of course those measures can be taken, but overall the system of healthcare has evoked this opiate crisis because of their misprescription and because one becomes addicted to the overuse of opiates, they will most likely get it from Walgreens and other pharmaceutical companies too, because they're running out of prescriptions and doctors don't know how to compassionately wean off someone from an addictive substance. And then they will run to Walgreens because there's more access to it. Of course, the dosage and the power and the same type of medication is not there, but they have this access. So now the doctors are saying, okay, we stopped your prescription, but you're still taking this. And now we have a lot of, you know, homeless people on the streets because they're addicted to opiates. And the city wants to blame Walgreens for it. They have gotten a settlement for it. And Walgreens kind of like, okay, we don't really know what we did, but here's some money for it, you know? And it does not seem like a good solution. And given the state of Philadelphia, the infrastructure and how healthcare has been going so far, it, I don't know where the money's going, but I really hope that it's actually being used for the function that the settlement went through instead of just going into the pockets of those who want it, because you're not going to help anyone with an opiate addiction by not knowing how to compassionately wean them off of it. Like, doctors just think that they can just cut them off. And then now they're censoring Walgreens and other pharmaceuticals, but in the middle, you will meet the people who are just, aching for these addictives because that's all their body has been used to, their system. And so this rehabilitation system that they are promising to make, I would really hope has that compassionate care that actually like lowers the dosage and rather not, stop it because it's
Mhm.
also harmful for the body too.
Mhm.
So that's what's been going on. And my personal feeling is that, the city of Philadelphia cannot point fingers and use it as a scapegoat. But if they do have money and they do have plans for it, I hope they ensure those plans follow through and make at least somewhat of a difference.
Mhm. So I um I feel like, yeah, you pointed that out well about the fact that there may be a misplaced printing right now. Um, Walgreens, so the pharmaceutical company, is not the sole culprit for opioid addiction. And I would say that we are kind of not going at the core yet again, like blaming or maybe like feeling fear or feeling attacked in our infrastructures because like, oh my God, now we have homeless opioid addict problem on our streets. And that can be kind of a parallel with the other subject where we're not actually kind of wanting to look at the core of where this originated from in the past and wanting to have different solutions. And the actual thing is like, um, what are we allowing the health professionals to give as prescriptions for people? Because in France, like it's been 20 years, and my dad kind of talked about that as a med. Um, there has been a crackdown on really being very, very careful with the types of things that you prescribe to people, depending on their um, states, I guess, fragile states, strong states. And even as a normal, healthy person, you wouldn't want to prescribe too much of something that involves codeine or opioids to somebody because we now know, we've known for 25 years that this is very addictive. And I don't know how the US health system kind of works, but in France, like people are very, very careful and have different dosage of medication. So some dosage of painkillers that don't have any of the addictive substances or very much like not much, with a huge crackdown on how many prescription renewal you're allowed and how you need to be followed through in order to not go into addiction. Obviously, like it still sometimes happens, but way less, it seems, than in the US. And I wonder if like there isn't just a need to go through how the health system is treating patients through the whole process, I guess. Maybe a little look at what are the different solutions that you are offering. Like, yes, opioids is very addictive, but what else? Like, what do you suggest for these people that are in need of uh, things that can relieve their pain? So, how are you structuring that so that it's actually written down somewhere so that it doesn't happen again or continue to happen? But that's a very non-informed on the US health system point of view. And I'm curious to know how, for example, Isaiah and Sage kind of see this situation. If Isaiah, you've had to be confronted to these kinds of things, and And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because so like I've had major surgery, um, right, and I've had it recently, and I feel like there's just a feeling in America, basically like um, so I can say for what I was prescribed, it was like, of course, it was professional. It's like the dosage you need, and that's it. And for me, that was fine. But I also had this feeling of like, if you wanted more, it would be very easy to get that. Like, if I had spoken with my doctor and said, my pain is like through the roof, I it would be very easy for me to be prescribed more, I feel. Um, and that's just kind of how it is in America. Um, it's just kind of like, yeah, if I don't know, that's just the feeling I have. That is kind of easy to increase or get more. And yeah, so
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like uh, on the individual level, like the people have some sort of like the source of addiction is not the pharmaceutical companies, it's not the doctors, and it's not the pharmacies, right? Like we all know that each and every one of us is responsible for ourselves,
Hmm.
but society doesn't really know yet, but they're beginning to know we know it now, how to heal the core of it. So until that becomes more widespread, a lot of people will try to pin the blame on others, but at the same time, you have to admit that I think that one of the differences, I could be wrong about this, but this has been what I've gathered over the years, learning about this a little bit, is that in the US, like things are the pharmaceutical companies have a lot of power, like they have a lot more power,
Mm.
and they spent like so much money, like getting doctors and medical institutions to prescribe this and to it's almost I don't know the exact details of it, but I think it was almost the point of like, this is corruption, it's just corrupt, like literally feeding them money to feed the patients these medicines
Mhm.
with the knowledge of how addictive they could be. And so that started at the beginning. The beginning of the chain was the pharmaceutical companies, and we have seen some pharmaceutical companies. We've seen some of them like really get taken down, and these people getting legally pursued for their
Yeah.
practices, which were just fueled by like greed. But their medicines do some good for people too, obviously, because you want to have some painkillers sometimes. So it's not all bad or anything or all sinister, but it's like when you kind of encourage people to push the boundaries of what's acceptable just to make more money. And if that happened with Walgreens too, where they were like, well, you know, we could say no to this prescription, but we're just going to allow them to have it anyway, or something like that. Like, then yes, that's where they would be responsible there. But yeah, so I totally agree
Yeah, and I really
with
like
that.
what you said there because yeah, what you're saying is it's not like this is not the core of it is actually people being able to address their trauma and heal it
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
so that you don't need to medicate for, I mean, obviously, if you have surgery, you need to medicate for pain, but like then you won't get addicted to pain medication
Yeah.
because you addressed the root of how you feel. And yeah, love yourself there.
Yeah. I have to agree. Like, however, the defense system against addiction and I guess too much intervention from the pharmaceutical companies are in different countries. I feel like the overall feeling, but especially in the US, about these big pharma companies is that they're kind of money-mongering institutions. And I'm guessing that there is a lot of truth with what you guys are saying about like, yes, however, and you can fill in the blanks of like anything afterwards of like, um, yes, but the big pharma is not responsible for the fact that you feel, I don't know, trigger warning, like scared of dying and you want medication for that, or the fact that um you feel like certain levels of pain, or do you feel like you can't go without like pain medication, or maybe that some medications, not necessarily like pain medications, are replacements for good feelings in your heart. So it's kind of this thing about like, yes, however, there wouldn't be a place for that if people weren't in demand of that. And yes, this is sometimes facilitating the openings for addiction, but there is the existence of addictions in other countries that are have more defense from that anyway. So again, like it is kind of it's kind of a yes, it's kind of a problem, but it doesn't also resolve the problem at the core. So I get how, and I've had this feeling sometimes, like I get how easy it is to blame like the pharmaceutical companies for um the different problems that we have in the health systems as part of a system that isn't like suitable for everybody, and that maybe caring about money instead of the actual health, and not being very united in the ways that it's treating the health system, the healthcare. However, if you dig a little bit deeper, like we did tonight, I would say that it's not the first problem. So it's not the thing that we should be concentrated on. Just like for the other topic, it's not like the little protests and the little discussions on different complexities that we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on the core. Otherwise, like everything that we do above that um doesn't have lasting effects, or it's just like kind of a bandage on like on a bigger wound. And yeah, that's just it. That's just we just need to look a little bit deeper about why we are having these societal problems. And yeah, that's how I would like to conclude like my thoughts on this. And yeah, anyone would like to kind of have a last words on what we've talked about tonight?
Yeah, I wanted to add that research shows that when it comes to addiction, community is like one of the solid solutions for that. And when we have addicts and we don't have like the proper healing community, then they're not able to, find that belonging and actually give up their additives. Because we have a lot of vets that come from over the seas and they're experiencing PTSD, they're experiencing pains from their war wounds. They cannot reach out to a community or even their own family to help them, of course, with their deep traumatic wounds. And so the addiction pattern becomes very easy. And then they ask their doctor for it and it becomes very easy. The pharmaceutical company does not regulate with the doctors, and the doctors don't haven't really learned to regulate. There's new doctors that don't even know the system of really regulating. That's why it's really important to be self-aware that, what you're taking is very addictive. And knowing that we're in a community of harmonious twin flame unions, we're redeveloping that family unit, and then we're developing the communities that could bring that hope and that healing that a lot of people seek. A lot of people seek in, rehabilitation systems that don't work because that family nuclear foundation has not been found yet. And, we know it, we've experienced it, we're learning it, but not widespread.
Yeah, that's very true. Thank you so much. That was a very good way to conclude today's discussion, and I want to thank you all for the extensive research that you've done that have allowed us to talk about everything tonight. Thank you to everyone who's watched us live and on YouTube. If you enjoy these kinds of discussion, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share them so that we can do more of them. And also propose different topics that we could explore in the next few weeks. So thanks again, and see you next week. Bye bye.